Welcome back. And if you're stopping by for the first time, welcome to a space where we talk about finding joy, choosing peace, and living life with intention. Today, my guest is Sean Terwilliger, who is living with early onset Alzheimer's disease. Sean tells us about the first signs he noticed that something was wrong and his long road to diagnosis. We talk about surprising personality changes and a blood test that reveals something unexpected. It's an honest conversation about hearing you have Alzheimer's disease and navigating a life moving forward. Come with me. You're going to want to hear this.
It's the Don't Be a Miserable Cow podcast with your host, Lisa Marshall.
Today's guest is Sean Terwilliger. He was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2024. Sean is a writer, blogger, and Alzheimer's activist who is openly documenting his Alzheimer's journey. Sean is 62 years old, retired, married, a father of two, and a grandfather of two. He's a traveler, music lover, and storyteller. Sean has chosen to use his voice in a powerful way by telling his story, advocating for change, and sharing openly on his blog, the Alts blog. And he has a new book, Alts Fired Up. I love his passion, and I can't wait for you to meet him. Hi, Sean.
Hi, Lisa.
Thank you so much for being here to share your story.
I am so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I love that you're sharing your story from inside this diagnosis as opposed to talking about Alzheimer's from a distance. Your perspective is so deeply meaningful, and I'm just so grateful that you're here.
Well, thank you so much. It's as I've done my copious amounts of research in doing this, there's not a lot of us out there telling it from this side. And
right.
We do have advocates who they're advocating for with the Alzheimer's Association or other organizations trying to get their stories out. But I felt it was so important to have my voice be a champion for people who have this diagnosis so that they know there's hope.
It is not only so they know there's hope, but so that they continue to talk about it or feel comfortable to talk about it.
Erasing the stigma.
Yes. I mean, we need to normalize this. We talk about every other disease. Why not this one?
Absolutely.
Because it affects the mind.
Absolutely.
Tell me, who were you before your Alzheimer's disease diagnosis?
Who was I? Who am I still? No, actually, that's not true. It is different. And it's different in a really good way. My career was working in independent prep schools. I was an IT director and teacher. And I lived and worked at boarding schools for 20 odd years with my wife, who was a dean of students and deputy headmaster. And, we worked at a lot of schools. We started 2 schools, one in Jordan and one in China. And
okay, I wasn't expecting any of that.
And the truth of the matter is I fell into computer work because I have an intensely logical mind and I knew how they worked. And somehow when a computer would break, I would know what to do. But that didn't mean I liked them, so I didn't do any sort of, I cared very much that the work I did was good, right? I wanted to be good. I wanted to provide really good service and really good product to the schools that I worked for. But, the kids would come up to me and go, "Hey, Mr. T," they called me Mr. T, which I thought was fun. "Hey, Mr. T, did you read that article in PC Magazine about the," and I'd be like, "No."
What's PC Magazine?
It's, I know it, but no, when the last thing I want to do is read about this stuff. It's not interesting to me. So I had a 25-year career doing really well and interesting things. And like I said, I traveled the world. It was a great life.
It is a great,
but I never cared very much about it.
What did you care about?
Well,
what makes you?
So I'm a musician. I love being outside. I love moving. I love listening to and playing music. I love reading. I have recently discovered, and we'll talk about this, that I love writing.
Yeah.
But I wasn't really doing much, except the only times my writing Jones came out when I was at work was when I had to write how-to guides. And I would write fun. Like, my goal was to not be dry. Right. I never wanted to be dry. And so I would write fun, what I thought were intuitive how-to guides. And I really enjoyed doing it. I might write a blog for school, and I would do 3 or 4 posts before I got bored because, again, I was writing about stuff I didn't really care all that much about. And so I love to travel. I love to meet new people. But I'm also surprisingly very shy and introverted.
I can't believe that.
Yeah, it's true.
Okay, give me a situation where that applies. So
at a party,
okay.
This is all pre-diagnosis, okay? So at a party, I'd be the guy sitting on the couch petting the dog.
Really?
Yeah, or a cat, preferably a cat. No offense. I love dogs too, but I love all animals, but I'm a cat guy.
So wait, has that changed?
Yes. Yeah.
Why?
I have something to talk about that I really care deeply about. And I write about it in the blog and in the book where, when I decided that I was going to start talking about this, when I decided I needed to tell people, I was just like, I'm going to tell everybody all the time.
I love that so much.
There's no, at the beginning, it was difficult, right? And the first few people I told and the steps forward, and I refer to it as you live in a pit, right? You get diagnosed and you just fall face first into a pit of despair. And if you stay there, you're stuck. Right? You're never going to come out.
I feel like when you're telling those first people, you're kind of telling yourself too, because it's unbelievable.
Yep. Yeah. How do you, and when you've lived as I did in my brain, right? That's what I had. Like, my wife will tell you she didn't fall in love with me because of my dashing good looks or any of that stuff. It's because I'm smart and funny and I listen to her. And I remember, in December, what she said in March about wanting something, and I make sure she has it for Christmas, right? Like that's just who I am, right? And it's always nice when that happens. And so the thought of losing myself, right, that we have some talk about death to do because it's an inevitable part of this disease, and we'll get it in early right now because
it's inevitable part
of life. But that's exactly my point, right? I have never for a second been scared of dying.
Even before diagnosis?
No, it's not been, I'm not a religious man. Mm-hmm. I don't subscribe to any faith that leaves me to any concern about this. Yeah. I know that when I die, I will die. Yeah. Right. And, I'm terrified of losing me. Mm. Right? That sense of self that is intrinsic to our being, right? That piece scared me. That's what I was frightened of.
How do you balance that? How do you balance this passion and this new voice that you have with that fear of losing yourself?
I did it by deciding that I was not going to take this disease lying down. That I was going to do whatever I could to stay in front of the progression of the disease. And I have, by the way, and knowing it was probably going to be an inevitability, but setting myself a goal that said research is happening, science is happening, people are working on this. If I can stay in front of that curve of science, by the time there's something better out there medically, I will be able to avail myself of it, and it won't be coming out to a shell of who I was and useless.
And you're advocating for others, but you're advocating for yourself at the
Absolutely.
same time. And you don't make change in this space by lying down.
Absolutely. And there's there's many levels of advocacy, but self and then out there are the two major one, right? And so the beginning of this is all about self-advocacy, right? You don't worry about other people.
Right.
For the first 3-4 months, it's all about me. And if you're lucky, you can think about caring for your spouse as well at that point, right? And you live on that side of it. And I wrote a piece in my blog, which was the piece you read something when I first met you. And I went, oh my God, this woman lived what I wrote in my blog. Yeah. And I wrote it at you could have written what I wrote. It was that close.
When we met, when you told me who you were and that you were diagnosed, it was an immediate connection for me.
Yeah.
We hugged hard and just kind of held each other. We had a connection.
Yeah. And I appreciate that because I'm happy to be here doing this. And I think finding your people is such an important part of this whole process.
Can we go back to diagnosis?
Sure.
So actually before that, what are the first signs that you noticed?
So the first sign,
something's up, something's wrong. And also it's a two-part question. Did you notice that something was wrong first, or did someone else bring it to your attention?
Okay. So I had a TIA, which is a mini stroke.
Me too.
In 2018. And they discovered that I had what's called a PFO, which is a hole between the two chambers.
Me too. And mine was in 2018. Okay, that's really
awesome.
weird.
Wow. So I never 100% recovered from the TIA. But since that happened, I started to feel all right, I'm missing a few words in a way that I didn't used to. I'm forgetting things in a way that I didn't used to. I'm saying a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a very fluid speaker, still am. But for me, it was noticeable.
I'm stumbling.
Right?
Words
this is
thoughts.
Not me. And so I would say to my wife, Wendy, do you see it? And she go, yeah, I do. It's not, there's nothing devastating happening here. It's not like you're falling apart or anything like that, but it's something. Yeah, I definitely think you have some long-term effects of the TIA, right?
Okay.
And that was it, right?
And what's the timeline?
So this is all happening in 2018.
Okay.
I started to say, you know what? I'd really love to I don't know what they're called. Is there a test where one could test one's cognition? I'm curious.
How old are you in 2018?
This is in 2018. I am 55.
Okay.
So I was looking for a cognitive test. Because I'm analytic, and I just wanted to be able to take this test and then take another test in 10 years and see what it was. That's all. I wasn't concerned about anything else. I was perfectly content to say, all right, I had a mini stroke and it altered my being a little bit. And that's fine. I'm not so bad. Right. But I'm curious, right? Unfortunately, the medical industry in America says, that's not reason to get you in to see a neuropsychologist or a neurologist to have even a paper. I couldn't even get a MOCA test.
Oh my
right.
God. So the MOCA test, for those listening who don't know, it's
a 30-point test. That it's the test that asks you to remember 5 words, to draw a clock, to recognize animals, to get your way out of a maze, to repeat a drawing, things like that. It's
and it's quick.
It's quick
in the PCP's office.
Yep.
Typically. Right.
And I didn't know enough to ask for that.
Yeah.
Right. But I also didn't have a PCP with me enough to say, sure, let me just grab that test and we'll get it out for you so you can have it, right? It would have been easy. So instead, I asked, didn't get, and moved on. right?
In 2018.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I stopped thinking about it. And then pretty much I moved a lot. In those different schools, different towns, different states, different areas. And every time I moved and established myself at a new practice, I would go, hey, you know what I'd really like? I'd really like to have some sort of cognitive exam, just because this happened to me and I'm curious.
You're fine.
You're fine, right? 6 years.
Not even, this is mind-boggling to me. When I took my husband Peter to his PCP for the first time, that's the very first thing they did was take out that piece of paper and start asking questions.
See, the problem was I was living really rurally for most of that time. And I was still better than a lot of the people out there. Right. I'm highly educated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very articulate. Mm-hmm. I'm presenting like going, something's wrong with my brain. I'm not as quick as I used to be. And you're going,
you're fine.
You're fine. Right. And so to a certain extent, I see that. Right. I understand that. But in light of now with the blood tests and all of that stuff, and my real understanding that when a person and their spouse or two people who are connected intimately both come into you and you're a doctor and say, there's a problem, you owe it to your patient to listen.
I agree. And now with early diagnosis is key.
Right.
Because of the treatments, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah. So anyway, it went on and I'll be honest, I had other pressing health issues. I was intensely overweight. I had diabetes. I had hypertension. I was sleep apnea, all sorts of stuff that was just,
you look great now.
Thank you. And so those were they were physical, prominent things that were going to kill me if I didn't take care of them. Right. Yeah. And so when I went through my litany of what do I need to address, the neuro stuff started dropping down after I get done. So I blame it an industry that it took 6 years for me to get it. But it also, and I write about this a lot in the book, is it was also I wasn't pushing that.
Yeah.
Right. I was pushing, why is my blood sugar 400 and my A1C 14 and no one talking to me about a way to bring that down? Right. Why am I going to a doctor's appointment and weighing in at 240 pounds and no one talking to me about how to deal with that?
Right.
Right. And so to me, those were the things that had to get addressed.
Sure.
And so I started addressing them. And once I got all of those things put into place, right, or most of them, not all of them, but many of them, and I was feeling forward progress on that. And I will say also during that time, my wife developed a tumor in the top of her spinal cord. And so we stopped me fully while we dealt with her.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
Dealing with her introduced us to a neurologist, though.
Okay.
Which is part of a much bigger tale, right? But he's the guy who found the tumor. And he's the guy who said, I need to send you to a neurosurgeon. She had to have 4 different MRIs. She also had a doctor who said, I can't see anything wrong. Let's give you a cortisone shot down here in the base of your spine when the tumor is up there, right? Because he didn't want to take a second MRI or a third. And then she was our first fight with insurance companies to say, no, we need an MRI, not physical therapy. This woman can barely move. She has no feelings in her toes. She is losing core sense, shoulder sense. She's falling when she's walking. This is a big deal.
Yeah.
And so finally we found a neurologist who listened to that and got her the required MRIs. It's a great story because we decided, we live in Western Mass. Okay. We decided, okay, we need to get to Boston for a good neurosurgeon. Yeah. There's no way that anybody out by us is going to be the person, right? Even though the neurologist who diagnosed her was, having worked in schools for years, we had students who graduated become doctors. We called one of our students who was a doctor, and he said, let me look into it. He saw her MRI and said, that has to get dealt with without question. Let me do some research. What insurance are you on? And he found a guy out of Tufts Hospital in Boston, because we have Tufts Health Insurance.
Nice.
So that's what they cover. And so we had the neurologist send all of Wendy's stuff to this guy. And he also said, but I'm sending it to a local guy too, at Bay State Hospital in Springfield. And just because I want him to see it. And we're like, okay, send it to whoever you want, right?
Yeah.
We're going to Boston, right?
Yeah.
So this happened on a Thursday morning. Thursday afternoon at 2:00, the phone rings. Bay State Hospital in Springfield. Neurosurgeon's office saying, can you be in my office at 5? Like, not even can you be but you need to be in my office at 5. And so we go, okay. And we went into his office at 5:00, and he said, look, you have maybe a week before you're paralyzed permanently, before this tumor grows, just that little micrometer that will crush all of the nerves inside your spinal cord. He said, I'm going to cancel one of my patients on Monday morning, which is my next surgery day, and I will put you in at 7:00 in the morning if you want to go.
Oh my God.
And we looked at each other and we're like, you could tell, and I talk about this a lot, you could tell a doctor, right? You can tell when you're dealing with someone who's being dead serious and dead knows what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
And this guy had us convinced right away. Like, this was no charlatan, and he was like, this is my wheelhouse. This is what I do.
Yeah.
And I need you under the knife, and you need to not get a second opinion. This isn't about my ego. This is not about, the guys from Boston call you. No, they're not gonna in time. So he said, do it. We said, let's do it.
So Monday she has
the surgery. She had all of her feeling back that she had lost by the time they had wheeled her out of the operating room.
So you love this neurologist.
Yes. Well, I love that neurosurgeon, right? The neurologist I liked because he was a problem solver, right? He was a diagnostician.
Yeah.
And so when I got my PCP, when we got back to me and we got the PCP to say, okay, here's what you need to do. You need to go see one of our social workers in practice, and she'll give you what they call a MoCA test. And the MoCA test you have to take. And if you get a certain score, you can then get a referral paid for by your insurance to see a neurologist. Bam. Okay, fine. I'll do that. Go see the social worker. She gives me the test. I fail it by 1 point.
So score of
25.
25 out of 30.
Yeah. Okay. 26, you're fine. 25, you're not. And for me, that was the 5 questions. And the 5 questions, I couldn't remember a single one of them. The 5 words to remember.
5 words,
right?
yeah.
Recall. Yeah, I can still do a rhinoceros versus an elephant and draw a clock. That's fine. That's not even an issue, right? And so those tests, to such an extent, are so subjective and so not the right tests to be given, because they...
But you got to start somewhere.
You got to start somewhere, and I failed, and it was good. And so I got in to see
It is good that you failed.
This neurologist. We went to the same person who diagnosed Wendy, and he said, okay, he did exactly what a good doctor is supposed to do.
And that is,
do you see it? Do you see it? Okay, then it's real. Right?
Yeah.
And he said, I don't care that your mother died of Parkinson's. I don't care that your grandfather had hydrocephalus. I don't care that you have these diseases running in your family.
Yeah.
Not interesting to me. You failed the MoCA. You see a change. You see a change. We're going to get into this.
Okay. So then what was the next step?
So next step was an MRI to ensure that I didn't have any lasting brain damage from the stroke. I write about this in the book and in the blog. It was like of a guy
we keep talking about the book.
Yes.
Let's give it a name.
The book is called All's Fired Up.
ALZ.
ALZ, Fired Up.
And it will be available.
It will be available in August, available for pre-order in July. The subtext of the book is on the unstoppable nature of Alzheimer's disease, early onset Alzheimer's disease, and one man's quest to outpace it.
Boom. Okay, sorry I interrupted
No,
you.
please. It's an important thing.
So the MRI showed what?
The MRI showed nothing, right? Good.
Yeah.
Right.
So it showed nothing as far as damage to your brain from the TIA, or it didn't even show any atrophy?
Didn't show atrophy or damage from the TIA. Like it was just okay, you're fine. Let's move on
back to the next same old story.
The next phase, right?
Yeah.
And the next phase was, but I do want to say the neurologist also was like, look, we need to get you through a process of stuff, which is going to end with a PET scan to determine whether you have Alzheimer's or not. So Alzheimer's was on the table immediately.
When's the first time that you heard that word?
In this case, then. I knew the word.
How did you feel?
Terrified.
Yeah.
But also, I went into the MRI going, God, I hope I have a brain tumor. Right?
Yes.
That's operable.
I can relate
I can
to that.
handle that. I watch enough medical dramas on TV that I know you could survive a minor tumor brain surgery and come out of it just fine. I don't want Alzheimer's.
When Peter failed his MOCA and we went directly to his MRI, I was hoping for a brain tumor.
Yeah. We have so much in common.
Oh
it's really
God.
funny. So, so I had the MRI. It came out as fine as they do. I could talk at length about communication and stuff. Like this guy's a brilliant diagnostician, but anyway, the next step was a thyroid blood work.
Okay.
Right? Because again, thyroid issues can cause confusion and cause some of the symptoms. And again, I walk in going, let's hope my levels are all the way off the roof and I can take some sort of drug and have my thyroid issues or take my thyroids out or whatever it is. And no, I was fine. And so the next step was a PET scan.
Okay. Now, how much time has gone by?
So amazingly, for the U.S. medical industry, I got all this done in 3 weeks. Like I was fast-tracked.
Okay.
So now what I'd like to do is read you the intro to my book because it covers this question. Okay.
Please do.
So this is the introduction to the book. It's designed so that when a reader picks the book up in a bookstore or something, they know what the story is, because my story goes all the way back to health issues that don't have anything to do with Alzheimer's. That goes into Wendy's health issues, so I wanted to really lay a groundwork for what we're going to be getting in the future. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is the prologue. And if you want me to stop at any point, I can.
Please.
My father's Buddhist teacher gave him the name Kushin, which he told me means empty mind.
I remember reading this on your blog. It's so good.
Years later, I learned that the Japanese use the same word to mean the flood of misery which must be crossed in order to reach enlightenment. The results of the positron emission tomography PET scan showed up in my online portal over a week before my appointment with the neurologist. I'm going to copy them as I read them at the time. All credit to the reporting radiologist. Impression. Positive neurosec scan suggested of significant amyloid necritic plaques. I had to live with that for over a week.
That is... Can we just pause and talk about that?
Yeah.
I don't think that patients should get their results without a doctor or medical professional holding their hand.
Absolutely.
Okay. Yes. That's all I have to say about that.
And you are. Okay. I'll get to it.
Yeah. I mean, I've had cancer several times in my life because of my chart.
Right. Well, exactly.
But I didn't.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I had to live with that for over a week.
Okay.
My wife, Wendy, and I knew what it meant, but we really didn't know what it meant. And even though we had sort of prepared for this result, nothing truly prepares you for a diagnosis like this. Websites were searched, results were tearfully examined, but because we didn't officially know, we said nothing to anyone. And we waited, and we knew it was Alzheimer's. A little discussion. Alzheimer's disease is a progressive and currently irreversible neurodegenerative disorder that destroys memory, thinking skills, and eventually the ability to perform simple tasks, slowly and inevitably leading to the death of the body and the self. It is the most common cause of dementia in older adults and affects over 7 million Americans, over 2/3 of them women. It used to be considered an old person's disease, but since I was only 60, it would be referred to as early onset Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's is one of the several diseases that fall into the blanket term of dementia, all of which have different modalities and pathways to that same terrible end. Some of them, like Huntington's disease, are hereditary, and others, like vascular dementia, can be the result of a traumatic brain injury like a concussion. A diagnosis of Alzheimer's is a slow, plodding death sentence and promises lingering pain to the families and caregivers. And as I've said, we lived with that for over a week. Finally, the day of the appointment came, and if we were expecting a gracious, hug-filled, empathetic encounter, we were sadly mistaken. The news, "You have Alzheimer's," was shared abruptly and without any level of compassion. We were in the doctor's office for less than 10 minutes before being ushered out with a promise of a contact to the insurance company being made in order to get me on the recently approved disease-modifying drug lecanemab. And it's important to celebrate the fact that we now have a drug that actually modifies the brain and alters the progression of the disease. From the time Alzheimer's was named in 1906 until 2024, there have only been medications that reduce symptoms of the disease, nothing that actually address the disease at the root. This is a huge step forward. As we were sent on our way, I was told that my insurance company would most likely approve it at some level. They'd approve the testing and could verify the results, so the treatment was a foregone conclusion. And that was kind of true. But I would soon learn just how many hoops I'd have to jump through in order to avail myself of this foregone conclusion. However, in the moment, there was no, "Here's how you navigate this." There was no, "Talk to this person." There was no sense of any empathy whatsoever. And you know what? I gratefully needed someone who wasn't a wreck like my wife and me to gently reassure us that life was not ending at this exact moment, and there was no one around to do that. More specifically, I needed guidance. Where do we go? What do we do? This was just massive. This was just massive, and we were left to fend for ourselves. We went into our car and sat in the parking lot, and Wendy wept, for I am notoriously not a crier, and we struggled to make sense of what life had given us. There was a lot to do, but first we had to start to tell people that I had Alzheimer's, at least the immediate family, we felt. And so we did, often not well, and with some seriously awkward timing. Something like this shouldn't be told over the phone, but today's distances leave no choice. Still, people should be sitting, focused on the conversation. It's incumbent on the teller to be sure of it. It's not fair to spring this kind of grief on anyone when they're not ready. But how do you do that? I have absolutely no guidance on that. I'm not sure it's even possible. It's been almost 2 years now as I write this, and I've decided the best way to tell people I have this disease is to tell everyone, and to do it often and loudly. I started a blog, the Alz blog, and I started voraciously advocating for better government support for programs, trials, and research. I've spent enormous amounts of time researching the potential causes and remedies for Alzheimer's, and I have tried to become as much of an expert on the disease affecting me as I, a layperson with no medical training, could. And it is not, I believe now, inevitable that one must succumb. We have drugs to slow the progress down, and I've learned a lot about things like light, sound, supplements, and exercise, both mental and physical, that can actively regenerate damaged neural pathways. Because of the proven success of the current disease-modifying drugs and the acknowledged increase in the numbers of people with the disease, research is proceeding at a near breakneck pace, despite the current uncertainty in our government here in the United States. Funding for that research continues to be allocated and appropriate. It is, as my neurologist said when he diagnosed me, a good time to have Alzheimer's. And I plan to do everything I can to outpace the progression of this rotten disease so that I will be able to benefit from all the medical strides being made that are sure to be realized in the near future. So that's the diagnosis story that you asked for.
it's very obvious that you did not feel supported.
Yes.
Where did you feel supported?
So it's an interesting how things went, right? I am beholden to this neurologist for diagnosing me, for being the diagnostician that he is.
Even though you had crappy bedside manner.
I knew that going in.
Mm-hmm.
What I didn't know was that as I started to do research and I started to explore what was out there in the world and clinical trials and supplements and things, that I would go to him in my appointments and say, what do you know about, what do you think about, what he wouldn't care. That, like, I figured out my empathy from other factors, right? I have an incredibly empathetic wife. My family was really good for the most part about this. I had support. So that piece came.
But not from the neurologist.
Not from the neurologist.
I found the same thing.
And so one of my goals in life is to, and I can talk about this too. I went out to the University of Southern Indiana a month ago or a month and a half ago, and I spoke to kids in their pre-med program. These are kids in their gerontological care pre-medication program. And they were horrified by this story because they're young. They're in their early 20s, late teens going, I'm going to be empathetic. I'm going to care. I'm going to keep that. And so I talked to them about how the insurance companies and the need to make money were going to crush their spirits, and yet to say, you're the people who can fix this. Right. My generation has screwed this up so badly, and I fear the next generation has already too, has allowed that. But you don't have to. You're 22. You're going to figure out a way to do this so that when you diagnose somebody with Alzheimer's, you're at least handing them a packet of data to say, here, you live here. Here's a lawyer who deals with elder care and specializes in dementia care. Here's a support group. Here's a therapist you can talk to. Maybe you'll even have a neurology practice that has a therapist in it, so that the day you get diagnosed, there's a therapist sitting in the room waiting with you.
Or at least you're going to schedule some time with someone who is empathetic and who can guide you to where you can get some help.
Exactly. Because I get it's a different skill set to a certain extent, right? It doesn't have to be. So I found another neurologist in Boston. And I always knew I was going to move, right? Like this guy I was done with. I was pursuing too many avenues of treatment to have that be the guy I reported to. I stopped even talking to him about it. Like, he goes, so what's going on? I'm fine. Like that. I mean, my appointments were like, I was a sullen 16-year-old going to see this guy with my lip out.
You're not listening to
how's
me.
School? It was that. And so luckily I only saw him after my required MRIs, because he didn't even want to check in and see how I was doing, right? I had a required MRI. I think you have 4 of them while you're on lecanemab, and I had those. And then I would see him a week later, and he would look at them and go, well, it doesn't look like you have any problem. And I go, do you see any difference in my brain?
Yeah.
Is there anything we can we hold those two things up to a light and see if it changed?
Nothing. Let's talk about lecanemab.
Okay.
Let's talk about the decision to go on it, because it's a big one. And I hear it a lot. People are concerned about the side effects, the brain bleeds. Is it going to work for me? Did you have reservations, or did you just, obviously you had to be approved by your insurance? And then, but then even if you're approved, you have to make the decision to actually take the medication.
Not for a hot second.
Yeah, I would be the same.
Not for a hot second. Like I said, this was on the table from the very first appointment I had with this guy. So I've already known that I had a treatment plan, right? And so I latched onto it, right? As okay, I'm going to have this, but I'm going to have something to help, right? And so he said, I think they're required to. I'm not sure if they're required to tell you that you can take a blood test to see if you have a genetic propensity towards the bleeding in the brain. That is a side of, there is a test that you can take for it. Many people I know, it's to see if you have a double APOE4 gene. Mm-hmm. And if you have the double APOE4 gene, you have more likely chance. Okay. And so they won't deny you the drug, but you may think twice about it, or they may do double the number of MRIs or something like that when you're going into it. And he said to me, do you want to have the genetic test? And I said, no, I want the damn drug, and I want it as soon as I possibly can, right?
So you started the infusions twice a month?
Twice a month. I had to battle with, even though my insurance contacted, so Eisai, who's the company who makes lecanemab, they called me the next day, right? So then my neurologist's office was really good about getting me on this, right? And so Eisai called me and said, okay, we've already checked with your insurance, and they are going to cover this treatment for you. So you don't need to worry about this. So I had an appointment scheduled in 2 weeks to go back to my neurologist where he was going to set up my treatment plan with Leqembi. I get there and he says, you can't go on the drug.
What?
And I was like, exactly, except with a little bit more rage. And he said, your insurance company wants 2 other corroborating neuro exams, and they're both dated and useless, and I threw all mine out years ago, and I don't have them to give, so I don't know what you're going to do. That may not be a direct quote, but it's darned close, right? So you need to figure out how you can get these tests so that your insurance company will cover you. I do.
Like,
right?
What?
I'm at this point, I can't even watch a Hallmark commercial on TV, right? I am a mess. And,
you're overwhelmed.
I can look at my wife and she will burst into tears. Like, we don't have functional bandwidth to do this. And yet we had to. So we did. And we spent the next 2 weeks on the phone with the insurance company, calling every neuropsychologist's office in the area, all the way to Boston, covered by my insurance, not covered by my insurance. It didn't matter. We were just like, who gives this test? And no one gave the test. Right. The frontline people were like, I never even heard of it. But the other piece is, to a number, it was like, even if we give this test, we have an 8-month waiting list to get into the practice. And then you have to get referred, and then we have to see you and decide whether we want to. So it wasn't something that I could do. Right. And in the meantime, I am convinced, because I'm not the person I am today back then, that every day that I am not on this drug is one day closer to me being like that, in a wheelchair and a memory care.
So then how did you finally get the IV into your arm?
Okay. So I decided I was a mess. So I contacted the social worker who gave me the MOCA test. And I said, can I just come in and talk to you? You know basically what's going on. You want to know the rest of the story. I need somebody to vent to. Can I just come in? She said, absolutely. I went into her office and I sat and I spilled all of this crap that I've just spilled to you, to her. And she said, hold on a second. Hold on. Turned around, went onto her computer, clicked a few times and went, what was the name of those tests? And I told her, and she goes, yeah, okay, I just printed them out. Would you like me to give you those tests right now?
You're kidding me.
And I said, yeah. sure, I would. And so she did. And I failed them each because they're the exact same test. They're graded slightly differently. They're, they might ask us slightly, but they're basically the same test that says the same thing. And what I learned later was that the insurance company took the guidelines for the clinical trial that Eisai ran for Leqembi and made them the exclusions and the testing that Eisai used for the clinical trial, and made them the coverage trial. Whether that was real or valid or not didn't matter, right? So I took the tests, failed them. She printed them out, stamped them sent me on my way and said, deliver them over to your neurologist's office, and have a great day.
And that was that.
And so that was that.
And you were walking out calling Wendy going, you're not going to believe
So
this.
she was there.
Oh,
So we drove over to the neurologist's office. They close Fridays as a practice. This was on a Thursday. I dropped it off with the receptionist. I said, can you please make sure the office manager gets these so that he could fax them in to the insurance company first thing Monday morning. And she said, I will. And so that was it. We went and had a weekend of feeling like, okay, at least we're not fighting this weekend, right?
Yeah.
We have no answers. We have no solution, but at least we're not fighting.
We've done as much as we can.
Monday morning, 8:00, my phone rings. It's the neurologist's office, the office manager calling me up. Literally, he says to me, what did you do? And I said, what do you mean? He goes, your insurance company called over the Friday or over the weekend when we were closed, and they're covering you 100%, no cost to you, in full. What did you do? And I said, nothing. I said, I took the test. Did you get them? He said, yeah, I have them. I haven't even looked at them yet. I haven't sent them over. So I don't know what happened, and I don't know what happened. I don't, it's one of those things where I was like, I'm not asking like what happened over the course of this 2 weeks. I called the insurance company hundreds of times. I've called all of these people. Maybe somebody listened to me.
Somebody listened.
My neurologist didn't do it. And the tests I took, because they required them, weren't necessary at the long run. But at the end of the day, they did it. They covered it. And so that was my first lesson for me in terms of the actual need to just fight, to do it. And so my book, All's Fired Up, I actually go into, and it's on the cover, is there's a Viking helmet and Vikings.
Brain.
So I go into this whole thing about how you need to become a Viking warrior and have your shield maiden by your side and grab your skiggox, the battle axe, and the rondskewer, and go in and wage battle. But
how sad that we have to do that.
It's awful.
It's terrible.
That we have to do this.
It's terrible that you had to go through all of that and look at all the time that was wasted.
Yeah. But the reality of it is my first appointment with a neurologist was in May. My first infusion was in September.
Okay, well, that's fast.
Okay, it's amazing. Despite the fights, despite all of that, I was fast-tracked through this thing like I'm amazed. When I was writing the book and trying to put a timeline together, and I looked back at my Google Calendar to figure out what had happened, I was like, I'm spending 60 pages ranting about the state of the healthcare industry in America, and yet it was 5 months.
In 5 months. So here you are. Now you've gone through all this red tape. Now you're getting the infusions. What are you hoping to get from Leqembi?
Well, the promise is 30% reduction in progress. Mm-hmm. That's all I was hoping for, right? I at this point, I knew nothing, right? I was a neophyte. I hadn't done much research. I didn't know. All I knew was that this was the beacon on the hill, if you will, and that was the promise. And that's all. So I wasn't looking for a cure. I wasn't looking for anything. I didn't even think I had a hope.
Right.
right? It was just something I could do.
So for those listening who don't know, how do you quantify 30%?
It's really hard. So one of the things my neurologist said to me in his infinite wisdom was, you can't.
Yeah.
Right? There's no quantification of this
You can look
because
at PET scans.
there's no trajectory, right? Because I asked basically that question, well, what does that mean? You gave me 8 to 10 years of life when you diagnosed this. Does that mean 12 to 15? He said, you know what? You'll never know. Because A, we don't know how long you've had it.
Yeah.
B, we don't know what your individual progression was going to look like before. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what the effect of this on you is going to be either. Right. And, as much as I end up not liking this guy, that's really valid for him to say, that it, as nebulous and as non-helpful as it actually was.
It's truthful.
It is truthful. And it has really been something that I've managed to keep close to my heart in the time that I've gone through this. Look, there's just no way to know. I've learned other things, like I learned there's something called a centiloid score, which is, you can get a scale of 1 to more than 100, but the general range is 1 to 100, where they judge how they score how bad the plaques in your brain are, right? I didn't know that existed until later, after my treatment, when I did some research on it. And I asked him, hey, I never got a centiloid score from you. And he goes, yeah, we didn't get that.
What do you mean, yeah, we didn't get that?
Right. So not only all that, but even now today, I don't have a score to look back on to compare. If I was even able to get a PET scan after my treatment, which I wasn't, I was.
Wait. So you had a PET scan before treatment, and I already read about this in your blog, which is infuriating, but I'm going to
go ahead and ask me like it's brand new to you.
Okay. So you had a PET scan before you started treatment.
Yes.
And now you've gone through 18 months of infusions twice a month. And you would think that the neurologist, the insurance company, the drug company, and certainly the patient would want another PET scan to see what the effects of the drug had on your brain.
Wouldn't you?
And the amyloid plaque.
Yes.
Is there a reduction?
There is.
Did you get another PET scan,
I
Sean?
did not.
Why didn't you get another PET scan, Sean?
I didn't get another PET scan for several reasons. A, my neurologist, who is the guy. So I have 2 neurologists now. Okay.
The good one and the bad one.
The good one and the bad one. I no longer have 2. I have only a good one, right? Because I'm done with this guy. But I had to keep him because he was my prescriber. Locally for Leqembi, and I couldn't switch to the good guy in Boston because he didn't have writing privileges for me out here. So remember back in the day, when you used to be able to go to the hospital that was best served for your illness, and if you had cancer, you would go to Sloan Kettering or to Mayo Clinic, wherever, and get your treatment. And they had Ronald McDonald houses for the families to stay at when people had to. We don't have that anymore. Right.
No PET scan.
No PET scan. Fought for it. Didn't get it. My good neurologist, now only neurologist, said to me, look, this is not going to be apples to apples, but the best you're going to be able to do right now is take the newly approved amyloid blood test, which will show something. You won't be able to get what you want, which is to hold up 2 slides and see the reduction, right?
Boom, sure.
And certainly because I don't have a centiloid score, I wouldn't be able to look at a number conveniently saying, well, you came in with 45 and now you have 28. That's good or whatever. But you'll get something. Right?
So what was the result?
So the results of that blood test were that I do not qualify for having an Alzheimer's diagnosis anymore.
That's incredible.
It is.
Oh my God. Sean and I had such an important conversation about Alzheimer's disease that one episode simply wasn't enough. Tune in for part 2, where Sean opens up about the parts of himself that he's determined to hold on to. That's it for today. Remember, we all have a choice. Choose joy, choose peace, and don't be a miserable cow. See you next time.
Thanks for spending this time with us on the Don't Be a Miserable Cow podcast with your host, Lisa Marshall. If you're looking for a little more guidance or encouragement, you can find Lisa's books, Find Joy, No Regrets, and Oh, Hello, Alzheimer's. And if you'd like to support the show or learn more about Lisa and her guests, visit us at joywithlisa.com.